You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
And hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you after a 6-5 Braves win to even up their series against the New York Mets at a game apiece with 2 more to play. They were able to weather the storm that was around the ballpark and also a late storm in the force of the New York Mets, or in the person of the New York Mets, who decided to do some late scoring against the Atlanta bullpen. But the Braves, they scored just enough early on to hang on for that 6-5 win. We're going to talk all about that, the performance of Reynaldo Lopez, some timely Braves offense, some good signs from the reigning National League MVP, and, of course, get you ready for Game 3 of the series, which comes your way tomorrow. Before we get into all that, as always, the Braves POSTCAST is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta right here on YouTube. Leave us those likes and those comments. We appreciate those. Be sure to share the show with a friend, and be sure to subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Jake, I think the offense did just enough, but I came away from start number 2 from Reynaldo Lopez pretty impressed by a guy who has become just a bit more important to the Braves rotational plans with the news we got in the past week.
Yeah, like we talked about yesterday, I mean, it's a start, especially in this series alone. After losing game 1, you really needed him to come out here and give you a really good effort. And he certainly did that. And like you said, just enough to hang on and win this game with the bullpen, trying to give it away late.
Yeah, I don't know if they were trying to do it as much as the Mets were trying to find a way to get back into it. But the combination of the two, whatever the case, you kind of started to feel like the game was getting a little bit closer than I'm sure the Braves wanted it to. And you couldn't help but think about a couple of times during the game where the Braves had some runners on and maybe could have used a couple of more insurance runs. But either way, as I've said, for the last couple of years, you already know where this is going, I'm sure, Jake. You can win ugly. You can't lose pretty. And I don't know that this was the ugliest of wins we've seen from the Braves over the past couple of years, but they will take it. Braves now 7-3 on the year. The Mets take the loss, drop to 4-7. They had a little bit of trouble just getting into the win column for the first time this season, but they didn't have much trouble hitting against the Atlanta Braves, and particularly the bullpen in the last couple of games. We'll talk a little bit more about that as it goes on, but I really feel like we can't bury the lead. Reynaldo Lopez in this game, his second start of the season, even better than his first. It was 6 innings of 1-run ball against his old club, the White Sox, in his Braves debut. First start at Truist Park in a Braves uniform. 6 scoreless innings against the New York Mets. I felt like the velocity was there. Everything was really clicking for Reynaldo Lopez against the Mets tonight.
Yeah, 2 straight starts now, obviously, to begin the season. So still early sample size, but looks really, really good. And I talked about it yesterday. I didn't know how much he was going to have to lean on a third pitch. He really didn't. I mean, he threw 7 curveballs, just 1 changeup, but it was 54 fastballs, 20 sliders. He was still able to get through this Mets lineup, primarily using those 2 pitches. That he did a great job of mixing them up, got some swings and misses, some foul tips on that fastball up at the top of the zone, a really good slider as well that he has. Obviously, 11 whiffs against this Mets offense out of 45 swings there as well. You mentioned the velocity for him. It was up just a tick ever so slightly from his last outing, so that seems to continue to improve, although in that last inning it was more 92, 93, 94 and gave up some hard hit balls in that inning. But for the most part, all around, just another fantastic outing from Reynaldo Lopez, who, look, coming into the year was the Braves' 5th starter, and because of injuries, he's going to have to be more than that, at least for now. And certainly he has stepped up for the Braves in his first 2 outings. And again, in the series, after what happened in game 1, dropping that one, obviously Winans, I know we'll talk about later, is going to be in game 3. So you don't know how that's going to go. And Max Fried with his troubles going in the finale of this one, if the weather holds up. So this was a big start for the Braves just in this series. And he certainly delivered, looked good once again. And hopefully this just continues for Reynaldo Lopez.
Yeah, hopefully so. And for Reynaldo, I think just kind of proving that he is capable of covering the innings necessary to be a viable starter. That, I think, was one of the big question marks, or one of the boxes that he needed to check in spring training to prove that he could do that. In these first couple of games, he has proven that he's capable of doing that. I think there was some curiosity as to whether or not the weather was going to cooperate and let the Braves play this game against the New York Mets. It seemed to threaten all night long. There seemed to be a mist in the air for most of the night, and that definitely wreaked havoc with the pitching mound a couple of times, but ultimately they were able to get the game in. And if you are looking to get a game in, then you might want to check out the title sponsor for today's episode of the Braves Postcast. Don't want to bury this lead either. That's Game Time. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off an MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app with the code FIRSTPITCH. That is code FIRSTPITCH in the Game Time app. That offer is good through April 14th. So as the Braves and the Mets continue this 3-game series, Atlanta, of course, will be trying to take a lead and win yet another series and wrap up this homestand, which started out really, really exciting, the fashion it was against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And in those 3 games, Jake, we talked a lot about the role the Atlanta bullpen played with 13 2/3 scoreless innings. Now, they were taxed quite a bit, had to throw a lot of innings in that series. I don't know if it's, we've gotten far enough into the season where they're feeling overworked, but this first couple of games against the New York Mets has been a bit of a different story. A 3-run homer off Tyler Matzik by Pete Alonso got the Mets back into the game, cut the Braves lead in half. 2 more runs against Reynaldo Lopez in the 9th inning before he was finally able to shut the door. We'll talk more about the Braves bullpen as we go along, but it does seem like after all those scoreless innings over the course of the weekend, things have started to even out or like swing the other way here in these first couple of games against the Mets.
We talk about it in baseball all the time. It's a law of averages. Braves bullpen's not going to be able to keep up what they did over the weekend, but the regression has been really hard. I think on the flip side of that, the Mets offense was really bad in their first couple of series of the year. You knew that kind of had to reverse a little bit at some point too, and it seems to have reversed hard in this series. They have been really good. Look, this was a tell of 2 halves in this game, with the Braves pretty much dominating the first half of it and the Mets dominating the second half of it. But this Braves bullpen, you mentioned Aaron Bummer gave up 3 hard hits. Tyler Matzik gave up 3 hard hits. Joe Jimenez was only in there for 2 batters. He gave up a hard hit. Reynaldo Iglesias gave up 3 hard hits. Not something we're used to seeing from this Braves bullpen, and obviously as great as they were over the weekend, they certainly have struggled a little bit in this one, but certainly nothing to worry about. Obviously, they'll be fine going forward, but it just was one of those nights where it felt like it was going to be a pretty comfortable win. You would have liked to have gotten more from the offense early on when they had some of those chances, but that 3-run homer from Pete Alonso suddenly made things a lot more interesting. Maybe had Snicker use some arms that he might want to save for tomorrow, but either way, they had to come in, and ultimately they got the job done, just made us sweat a little bit more at the end.
Yeah, in a 6-0 game, you would hope that you don't have to use your closer, but the Mets had other ideas, and I think it was the right move to go ahead and get Reynaldo Iglesias in there. I don't know if the conditions were bothering him at all. He was able to kind of figure it out. You mentioned all those hard hits. It kind of seems a little bit different than it was back in 2022, where the Mets, I mean, they could grind out some professional at-bats, but it was not a club that hit the ball as hard as some of the other teams, the Braves included. They weren't that high up on that StatCast leaderboard, but you can throw the leaderboard out on this night because, as you mentioned, they were hitting the ball hard and they were hitting it into places in which the Braves did not have anybody standing there late in the game, and that allowed them to kind of get back into things. As the Mets were rallying and the Braves had already built up that big lead, a big part of what was going so right for the Braves was who's at the top of the order. I want to get into Ronald Acuña Jr. some more as we go along, but just one of those things, Jake, I think that we could safely say that Ronald probably needed a night like that where he could get on base, where he could do a few things and feel like he was kind of back in the groove or starting to get there and being a part of this offense again.
Great to see for him. Again, not somebody that needs a whole lot of a confidence boost, but he's human. I'm sure he's not happy with himself in the start that he's had to the year. So I think that was big for him to get on base, steal some runs or steal some bases, score 3 runs in this game and really be a part of the action. Still a 691 OPS for him. We're going to see that go up, and that's not what we're accustomed to seeing. I talked about this a lot on the podcast, the Locked On Braves podcast on Tuesday. Did a whole segment talking about Ronald, and it really, for me, just is timing. He just seems to tick off right now with some of his swings. He seems like he's out in front of the off-speed pitches. He's a little late on the fastballs, and I really think that's all it is for Ronald right now. There is no concern for him. He's going to get it going, and this is maybe one of those nights that helps get him going in that right direction, and we know when he's on, and we're used to him being on every day, and that's just the thing of it when Ronald goes into a 3, 4, 5 game, mini slump for his standards. A lot of people are kind of a little worried and raising some questions about it, but He's going to get going. And when he does, he's absolutely going to take off.
Yeah. And like I said, we'll get into it a little bit more as we move along. And we do have a lot to get to here. Reynaldo Lopez, his start, of course, is the big story from the night. The offense in the 3rd inning in particular looked pretty good, and it wasn't relying on the home run ball on this night. So that's also, I think, a big thing for them. And of course, we've got to get you set for the the third contest of this series, which will be coming your way as well, as the Braves and Mets will continue on what should be a much better night for baseball on Wednesday at Truist Park. All of that is coming your way as the Braves postcast continues. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite stars and players. Baseball season is in full swing, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs, home runs, Ronald Acuña Jr. stolen bases, whatever it is, pick more or less, add them to your Prize Picks entries today. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That is Locked On MLB in the Prize Picks app. All right, as we talked about a little bit, Reynaldo Lopez was a big story for the Braves in their Game 2 win over the New York Mets, but I want to go a little bit deeper into this one because of how important it's going to be for Reynaldo Lopez to continue building on these first couple of outings. It is, as you mentioned, Jay, kind of small sample size theater, but you have to be encouraged by a guy who hadn't started a game in a couple of years coming out and throwing 2 quality starts, which if you're looking at what the Braves starting rotation has done, and this is outside of the injury news concerning Spencer Strider, they have not been able to put up the number of quality starts that you might like to see thus far this year. 6 innings, 3 hits, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts for Reynaldo. He's allowed 1 run in his first 12 innings. I know working out of the bullpen, he has that high 90s fastball at his disposal. We'll see how all of this plays out as the Braves look to backfill their rotation with the Strider news. And, of course, the Braves could add someone as the season goes on if they feel like there's somebody out there in a deal that they can make to help, cushion, I guess, if you can, the loss, because you're certainly not replacing Spencer Strider. I don't think that's going to be highly unlikely. But Reynaldo, they're going to lean on him a lot more than they maybe planned to when he won that 5th starter's job back in spring training.
It certainly could be the case for him. And if that is the case, it's going to be interesting to see how they manage his workload. I already talked about the fact that maybe they want to manage Chris Sale's workload. So I know we've discussed it. I think we're going to see a lot of Brave starters get some action this year, whether it be a Winans like we're going to see on Wednesday. Obviously, we think Elder's going to get a shot in the rotation soon. Darius Vines, maybe Ian Anderson at the midway point. Huascar Ynoa threw 4 innings the other night. There's plenty of options there. I think we're going to see all those guys, but again, losing a key guy at the top of the rotation and Strider, you can't replace that. But maybe one of your better options to kind of fill out the back of that rotation is Lopez. If he can continue to pitch like this, and if we continue to see the velocity tick up a little bit more, maybe he continues to develop that third pitch and that curveball changeup, whatever it may be, a little bit more, I think he becomes a dangerous pitcher for you or somebody else that can really help you win some ball games. So again, it's a developing situation that we'll monitor throughout the season, but you can't deny the results so far. 12 innings, just 1 earned run. He's looked really, really good. And certainly if he can maintain this, there's no reason to even really think about moving him back to the bullpen.
Yeah, and he was a big part of the Braves' 6-5 win in Game 2 against the Mets here on Tuesday night. For the Braves in this game, 6 runs on 11 hits. They made 1 error. Mets with 5 runs on 12 hits, 1 error for them. Atlanta leaving 7 men on base. The Mets left 8 men on and were just 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. So when Reynaldo Lopez got in trouble, he was able to wriggle his way out of that. The Mets were able to make a run of it late with 3 runs in the 8th on the Alonso homer and a couple more runs in the 9th against Raisel Iglesias, but ultimately unable to find that tying run, that pesky one that would have kept this night going. And with the way the weather was, I don't think anybody wanted to keep playing at Truist Park on Tuesday. Lopez picks up the win. It's his first of the year. He is 1-0. And Adrian Hauser takes the loss. He's 0-1. He gave up 5 earned runs across 5 innings to the Braves, only 1 strikeout. So you knew Atlanta was capable of putting the ball in play, and there was a lot of that happening in this game. Multi-hit contests for Ronald Acuña Jr., Ozzie Albies, and Austin Riley, with both Albies and Riley knocking in 2 runs. Matt Olson, Marcell Ozuna drove in the other 2. And at the top of the order, Ronald Acuña Jr. with 3 runs scored on the night, 3 stolen bases. He had 2 hits and a walk. Just good to see Ronald kind of back and involved in this, as we talked about a moment ago. I was peeking at his StatCast info, and I know you were looking at this as well. Pretty much the polar opposite of where he was a year ago, really not hitting the ball altogether that hard, or really not hitting it hard at all. It's just not really what you are accustomed to seeing from Ronald Acuña Jr. But I can tell you this, I have seen the peaks and I have seen the valleys for Ronald, and about the time that he goes through one of these funks where he's 2 for 22 or something like that with more strikeouts than you really expect from him, he has a little night like this where maybe he starts to get a few things going, and all of a sudden he can just go on a heater, and that could just reverse everything and get him back on course. There's a lot of baseball left to be played. Long story short, there's 152 games left for Ronald Acuña Jr. to get going, but I'm sure he would like to get himself back to what he's accustomed to doing, which was last year some pretty special stuff.
Yeah, he definitely wants to get back there. Braves fans want to see him get back there. It's incredible to see what this offense has done so far, and the reigning NL MVP hasn't even gotten going yet. I think you do look at it, and I went through all the StatCast numbers on the podcast Tuesday, but they are just significantly down. And I think the one thing that you look at is the strikeout rate, over 30%, 9-10 game sample size. Now, obviously very small, but that's something that we were just blown away with that Ronald did last year, and cutting the strikeout rate down 10%. So again, that's just another example, I think, in my mind, of showing us that he's just a little off right now. Again, just doesn't have the timing down, maybe not recognizing pitches as well at the moment, but something we know that he'll figure out. And once he does, like you said, he's just absolutely going to take off. There's not much concern there at all. I will say the one thing, no home runs in spring training, still doesn't have a home run here. We haven't seen really that power throughout spring training and now into the season. He wants to get that off his back. But again, just to reiterate, once he does, it feels like they come in bunches. So he's going to get there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And if you do look at the strikeout column in tonight's game, there were none for Ronald Acuña Jr. So maybe that's another sign, to go with all those times on base, that he's starting to see the ball a little bit better. And those home runs, they're going to show up. I know we were talking about, the 40-40 season last year. How would he get there? Well, a monster month of September really put him over the top for that. He's capable of 10, 12, or more home runs in a calendar month. I don't think that that's really asking too much from Ronald Acuña Jr., because once he gets going as one of the best players that we see in either league and that we may see in this generation, that he's capable of doing Ronald Acuña Jr. type things. And when he spoke after the game, he said, look, I was just trying to get on base so I could start getting stuff going again with my legs. He stole 3 bases in this game. That gets him up to 4 on the year. I'm keeping the tracker. I hadn't been able to use it since opening day. It was a little bit weird, Jake. It still has no home runs on it, but 3 stolen bases in one night. At least we got something going there.
It certainly does. And look, he is a leadoff hitter at the end of the day. Now, he's a special one, and we certainly like the power speed combo that he has. But I mean, he is the table setter, and especially for this lineup, you want to see him get on base. You want to see him create havoc and get in the pitcher's head a little bit with all the speed that he has, and to steal those bases, stole second and then third, to set himself up in a situation with 1 out to come in. Now, Ozzie didn't get it done, but Riley followed it up with a base hit to bring him in. So to see him get in there and contribute, and look at the top of that order between Acuña, Albies, and Riley, they reached base a combined 8 times in this game. And that's just, what this lineup can do when he is on there. It just makes everybody else better behind him. They're going to see better pitchers because the pitchers are so worried about Acuña on the base pass. And it's just what he can do, even without the home run that he hasn't gotten going yet. Just the threat of his speed has such an impact on the guys behind him.
Yeah, and I feel like there's just going to be this game where he's going to hit that leadoff home run, and all of a sudden it's going to feel like Ronald Acuña Jr. is, as he would like to say, he's back. And we'll see when exactly that's going to happen. That bottom of the 3rd inning, though, was a pretty unique one for this Braves offense, because we know about their extra base hit ability, their home run power. That's 1 through 9. There's a lot of that going on, but Ronald Acuña Jr. singled, Ozzie Albies singled, Austin Riley singled, Matt Olson singled. You might sense a theme here. Marcell Ozuna singled, and then Michael Harris singled. So 6 straight base hits for the Braves as they put that crooked number on the board and built up a 4-0 lead. They'd add single runs in the 4th and the 6th inning as well to make it a 6-0 ball game. So the Braves able to score 6 runs without the virtue of relying on a 3-run homer or some of the other big power displays that this offense is capable of, just manufacturing it, going station to station. That was enough in this one. You talked about Austin Riley and Ozzie Albies, Ronald Acuña Jr. reaching base 8 combined times in this one. That'll work from the top of the order. You do that kind of table setting. And typically the middle of the order, and guys like Matt Olson and Marcell Ozuna, who are both off to good starts, are going to have those RBI opportunities as well. Down at the bottom of the order, Jarred Kelenic picked up a base hit in this game. That means he has reached base in all 10 of his games in a Braves uniform. I know it hasn't been a big power surge for him. It hasn't been, one of the, him taking over the entire offense. And quite frankly, he doesn't need to. He can just kind of do his thing. And that's what he's doing right now. He's one of just 4 players in Major League Baseball to reach base in each one of his team's games to start this season. It's a nice little note for Jarred Kelenic, who a few weeks ago, people were kind of wondering, what's it going to look like? Is this guy ready to play? It looks like he came out swinging to start the season and making a great first impression here.
Looking at the OPS numbers here at the box score, and he leads the Braves at a 1094 OPS right now. So certainly off to a good start. I will say in these two games, a couple more strikeouts on Tuesday night as well. We've seen him just a little bit off in these two games in particular. The hit he had, kind of a bloop in there. So, not trying to pour too much cold water on it. It has been a great start for Kelenic. And I think, you see in the arm as well, defensively, what he's doing out there, just another part of this pickup for the Braves that I think is going to be, such a good combination with him and Duvall, and just make left field. There's really no weaknesses on this team now. You look at it with the way Kelenic's playing. You got Duvall there as well against a lefty. So it's great to see the start that Kelenic's gotten off to.
Yeah, some great depth there with Adam Duvall coming over, and that tandem, in addition to the rest of that outfield, he has a chance to give the Braves some of the best outfield production that you're going to find in baseball, and a lot of that will have to do with Ronald Acuña Jr. getting things going as well. When we come back on the Braves Postcast, we will get you set for Game 3 of this 4-game set that comes your way on Wednesday. The Braves have named a starting pitcher, as it is the first time they're going to fill the void in rotation that has been left by Spencer Strider. We'll update his status, and we'll also talk a little bit more about the Braves and the Mets as the series continues right here on the Braves Postcast. We have all been there trying to navigate that tiny map or pick from a list, and you just aren't sure if the seats you're looking at are altogether that good, if the price is right, and can you find the best deal. But Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which means getting tickets is going to get even faster and even easier with Game Time. Because if you want the best deal and prices on Game Time, you're actually going to find that they go down as it gets closer to first pitch. And that is a pretty cool option for you. So you can find those killer last-minute deals, the all-in prices, the views from your seat. You'll see exactly where you're going to be sitting and what it looks like from there. Lowest price guarantee, and Game Time is just taking the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. It's not just baseball, though. Game Time's last-minute deals, you can save 60% off last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, and for a limited time, users can get 20% off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app with the code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That is code FIRSTPITCH, FIRSTPITCH, for $20 off through April the 14th. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Braves with a 6-5 win in Game 2 of this series. Now they've evened it up, and now in Game 3, they will look to take a lead in this series over the New York Mets, and they will do so by having to fill a spot in rotation, and this is something we've talked a lot about. Given the injury to Spencer Strider, this is going to change the Braves' plans in ways that they did not want to even be considering here in 2024 or any other season, I can tell you that, and it's going to be Allan Winans who gets the call against the New York Mets to make that start. He was called up when Spencer Strider was placed on the injured list on Sunday with what the team is calling a UCL sprain. Spencer Strider has gone and gotten that second opinion, but the Braves are not going to update his status again until the weekend. By that point, Jake, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to imagine that he may have already had that Tommy John surgery, which would be his second. Given the injury and the fact that this UCL involvement is something that typically does lead down that trail, it's just a shame to see Spencer Strider have to go through that again. And it puts the Braves in position of having to replace one of the best starting pitchers in baseball.
And as we said earlier, there's no replacing him. You're certainly not going to replace him with an Allan Winans. No disrespect towards him, but it's just, he was a favorite to win the NL Cy Young this war. We were talking about him getting 300 strikeouts, and now here we are talking about him not pitching again for a year and a half. So, it's a situation. It's a state of baseball right now. It's not just Spencer Strider. It seems to be happening all over. Just in the last week alone, we've seen Yuri Perez, Shane Bieber, Ramir Valdez has gone down for an elbow, Nick Pivetta as well. It's just all over right now in Major League Baseball. I know a lot of people are trying to figure out why it's happening and how they can kind of prevent it going forward, if you can. As for Allan Winans, came up last year. I was impressed with him and a lot of his starts. His first start that he had against the Mets, it was his second start overall. 7 innings, 4 hits, 2 walks, no earned runs, and 9 strikeouts, 111 pitches. Now, he faced him 9 days later, gave up 7 earned in Atlanta and 4 1/3. So certainly was two totally different outcomes there. But I love the competitor And Allan Winans, when he's on the mound, 4 of the 6 starts he made last year, he gave up 2 earned or less. He had a fantastic season at AAA Gwinnett. So there is some potential there with Allan Winans. I still got to think, and I know we've talked about it, I think Bryce Elder's probably going to get a shot here at some point, but Winans is there. Might as well give him a start now, as Elder's not going to be available anyway for Wednesday's game. But I like Allan Winans. I like what he did last year. He's one of those guys, control pitcher, but when he's on, he can get some weak contact. He can pitch deep into games. There'd be a lot of pitches and hopefully keep you in the ball game.
Yeah, hopefully so. And I think that it's a good opportunity for Allan Winans, who may not seem like the name that you look at that depth chart and think, oh, he should be the first one up. But some of that does have to do with guys that had thrown in the minor leagues or what the plans were for them. And obviously, this is not going to be the final decision and final move that the Braves are going to make. Going back to that pitcher's injuries, I saw a list on X earlier today, and I had to bookmark it because it just blew my mind. It's about 36 names that have had either forearm issues, elbow issues, or a combination of the two. Josiah Gray of the Nationals was one recently, though that's a forearm problem for him and not a UCL deal. Nick Pivetta, Jonathan Loizaga, Framber Valdez, Shane Bieber, Spencer Strider, Yuri Perez, Sandy Alcantara, Jacob deGrom, Tyler Mahle, Jordan Romano, Anthony Disclafani, Luis Garcia, Jose Urquidy, Lucas Giolito, Kyle Bradish, Robbie Ray, Felix Bautista, Shane McClanahan. I mean, this list goes on and on and on and on. And I know that, Tommy John surgery is nothing new in the game, but just the pure bulk of what's going on right now, I think they do owe it to themselves to try to figure it out. But some of the answers are going to be pretty obvious. We are in a generation of pitchers where guys throw harder and spin the ball more than we've ever seen, I think, in the history of baseball. Yeah, there may have been some outliers and some hard throwers in the past. I'm not saying we all of a sudden figured out how to throw above 95 as a society, or as a baseball society anyway. But this is just something that has to be concerning. And I'm sure teams are going to try to figure this out the best that they can, because a lot of these guys that I mentioned, I mean, they're huge parts of their individual pitching staffs. And some of them, of course, have some pretty big contracts as well. So teams have got a pretty big investment in this. And it's also, I think, is maybe changing the way that teams are looking at how they invest in pitching as well. There's just a lot of ramifications here.
I know we talked about this when we saw each other at the game on Saturday. It's just, what do you do with pitchers who are free agents now? How can you consciously give them 6-7 year deals when there's a pretty good chance that they're going to miss 1.5 to 2 years as that deal? I mean, with the way that things are going, it's not if, it's when a pitcher is going to go down and need Tommy John or have a shoulder injury. I mean, look at what the Braves did with Kyle Wright, a guy who just won 21 games, but he's had repeated shoulder injuries, and the Braves weren't willing to wait that out and just essentially shipped him off. I mean, it's just the unfortunate reality that we are with pitchers right now, as you mentioned. And I've kind of already given, my thought on this is that, pitchers are throwing harder than ever. They're spinning the baseball more than ever. They are throwing the baseball a lot quicker, obviously, with the pitch clock. I don't think that's so much to blame as it is just a high velocity and the max effort that pitchers are going out with every 5 days and doing it from a young age. And look, it's not just high velocity. As I saw Peter Moylan's tweet saying, he didn't throw that hard. He still had all these injuries. And when it comes down to it, the arm is just not meant to do these things that they do time in and time out. But when you have more and more guys doing it with such high velocity, such high spin rates, the tackiness on the baseball has gone away with the new rules there as well. I mean, all of that kind of combined is leading to this big boom of injuries.
Yeah, and I wanted to throw that in there. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, there have been pitchers, I believe Tyler Glasnow may have pointed to the fact that, hey, once we weren't able to use, and I'm not talking about like spider tack or some of the crazy stuff that, should be a banned substance that you can't use as far as like doctoring up baseballs and things like that. But some of the other things that they can't use, he did feel a difference in how his arm was reacting after not having the ability to use some of that stuff. And maybe that's something for them to solve. I can't tell you, just based on the time code of this video, we're not going to be able to solve it here tonight, but we can get you ready for Game 3 as the Braves and the Mets will play on Wednesday night at 7:20 at Truist Park. It will be Allan Winans, the right-hander. He's 1-2 in 6 starts for the Braves last year. 2 of those against the New York Mets, as Jake mentioned. One great, one not so great. 5.29 ERA in those 6 starts for Atlanta a year ago. He'll face the left-hander, Jose Quintana. He's 0-1 with a 2.61 ERA. Braves hit pretty well against lefties. Perhaps that will bode well as they face Quintana and look to take a lead in this series, assure themselves no worse than a split, and then see what happens on Thursday as they get ready for that road trip out to Miami and to Houston as well, as the Braves will hit the road for the second time this year. that does bring us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you being a part of what we're doing here. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta here on YouTube. Leave us those likes and comments. Go ahead and click that bell. You'll get notified every time we drop a new episode here on the channel. And make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Braves, where you get the audio version of the postcast and all the great stuff Jake has for you all week, all season long. You've got everything covered here on Locked On Braves. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We would appreciate that. Once again, the Braves hang on for a 6-5 win over the New York Mets on Tuesday night at a rainy Truist Park. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Until then, he's Jake Mastroianni. I'm Grant McAuley. We will catch you next time. So long, everyone.